there, welcome to another ADHD video by Wilhelm. Today we're going to be going over something quite important. We're going to be going over the transition into middle school, into adolescence, into puberty. These changes are very important in the lives of those of us with inattentive ADHD. So I wanted to make a video for parents and perhaps teachers and friends and colleagues to better understand an adolescent when they enter middle school, when they go through that immense change. There's a lot of neurochemistry and physiological changes that happen in the brain and in the body, as we all know. But when you got ADHD, particularly inattentive ADHD, those changes can sometimes be unbearable if we don't do anything about it, especially if we don't have the care and support from our loved ones that we so rightfully need. The right type of care and support. Because some parents mean well, some teachers mean well. But when you don't know about the condition, it's a little tough to do that. So I wanted to make this video. These are things I wish people around me, my teachers and etc., knew of me when I was in middle school way back in the day. So I wanted to share it with you guys so, we can get some help for the other young and attentive types out there. Because it's a really rough change, a really rough transition. So they deserve all the help they can get. So let's dive on into it. Scenario numero uno. Difficulty falling asleep, bad sleep hygiene, not getting enough deep sleep. So what happens with this is that we have issues in our neurochemistry with the amount of serotonin the brain produces. Now serotonin eventually becomes melatonin. Now, they're both neurotransmitters. Melatonin is what the brain secretes, what the pineal gland particularly secretes while we're sleeping. And that's what helps us out with deep sleep. Serotonin is a precursor to melatonin, but since we have difficulty making serotonin, it can make it very hard for us to remain asleep. We also lack collagen in the body, according to some studies I've seen. So this makes it really hard to stay asleep because our body becomes uncomfortable in certain positions, in certain angles. We might feel our joints stiffened and our body just feels a lot of discomfort. So some of us wake up frequently throughout the night. Also, bedwetting when you have ADHD is also a very common thing from what I've studied. There's also more difficulty. We have difficulty as well with dopamine. So dopamine helps regulate our body's circadian rhythm. What's circadian rhythm? Some kind of drum beat? No. Circadian rhythm is our sleep and wake cycle. Now, some of us with ADHD can go to sleep at the same time every day. And a lot of us with ADHD go to sleep at random times because we don't get sleepy. And we just wait until we get tired or sleepy and then pass out. Unfortunately, that's not very healthy. And that's not healthy with our sleep hygiene. So what we can do for that is we can utilize a supplement to take to help out with dopamine. So you get your circadian rhythm on check, it's going to be easier to fall asleep at the same time more frequently. And if you're an adolescent entering middle school, this is going to be very helpful. So you take care of those things and sleeping is going to become a lot easier. Because what we can do is make sure to speak with your pediatrician or your doctor or your healthcare professional and psychiatrist or whoever the hell you go and see. Speak to them, make sure that they're okay with you taking supplements and it's not going to interfere with anything else, just to be on the safe side. And then consider certain supplement options. The ones I take in particular are, I take collagen, a collagen supplement to help me go to sleep. It helps relax the body and it helps me be able to sleep without waking up because my body feels uncomfortable. Because my body's relaxed. The joints are relaxed. The ligaments are relaxed. You're just good to go. So what I do is I take the collagen supplement and then right afterwards I'll take an N-acetyltyrosine supplement, which helps out with dopamine and norepinephrine. In this case, we're focusing on the dopamine. It's going to help out with your circadian rhythm. It's going to help you go to sleep at the same time more frequently. So 10 minutes after I take the N-acetyltyrosine, I take a melatonin supplement, a 300 microgram 6-hour extended release micrograms is a smaller unit of measurement than milligrams. And from what studies have shown, 300 micrograms was what melatonin was synthesized with in the previous century. So I've tested different dosages of melatonin, and 300 micrograms has been the most optimal one for me. So it's a 6-hour release, meaning the pineal gland in the brain will be secreting melatonin throughout the night. So right after I take that melatonin supplement, I will take 2 individual 100 milligrams of L-theanine to help out with serotonin. Now, some people who lack a lot of serotonin, L-tryptophan is another option to take. That's also another supplement that helps out with serotonin. It's a bit stronger than L-theanine. And by the way, L-theanine is just the calming agent found in green tea and just in supplement form. So L-tryptophan is a bit stronger for those of us who kind of need more of that. So keep in mind, speak to your healthcare professional before trying out any supplement, just to be on the safe side. So to reiterate, to help me sleep and keep the cycle the same and help me have the desire to go to sleep, remain asleep, and to get deep sleep, what I do, recap one more time, is collagen supplement. Number 1. Right after that, N-acetyltyrosine supplement. Wait 10 minutes, and then I'll take a melatonin supplement. And right after that melatonin supplement, I'll take 2 individual L-theanine supplements. Knocks me out like a baby. Good deep sleep. You really want to go the extra mile? Get yourself a sleep app that tracks your sleep and the quality of your sleep, and that wakes you up in a 30-minute, 15-minute, 25-minute window. So if you put your alarm to wake you up at 8, it might wake you up at 7:45 or like 7:52 if you put like a 15-minute window bracket between that time. Because it basically uses the phone's microphone to record your breathing patterns. So it'll wake you up in your lightest stage of sleep, and it's a beautiful thing because waking up in the middle of deep sleep with a loud alarm, or any alarm in general, can be really unnerving. Interestingly enough, I have a hypothesis that whatever state we wake up in, meaning where the neurochemistry is at if we're in deep sleep, if we wake up in that moment, we might be stuck with our neurochemistry the way it is at that moment. Just a hypothesis, because there's been times where I've woken up and I've felt like absolute crap, because all day because of waking up in the middle of deep sleep. So a sleep app is definitely recommended so you can wake up in a lighter stage of sleep. So that's what helps me out with sleep. It might help you out, and we'll see from there. So what ends up happening as well is that due to the ADHD, we have difficulty with consistency in sleep. So in elementary school, it is recommended that kids with inattentive ADHD, or kids that have ADHD that have problems sleeping, it's recommended that they catch up on their sleep on weekends, because sleep is highly important, particularly deep sleep. So let your son, your daughter, whomever, let them sleep a good amount on weekends. Don't plan a trip at 8 or 7 in the morning. It's not going to do the kid any good, especially if they got inattentive ADHD. So let them get their sleep. Let them get a good amount of sleep. I'm talking, I used to get 10, 12, 13 hours just to catch up on the absolute garbage sleep I used to get when I was in middle school and early high school. Because I would be tossing and turning, laying there for 4 hours trying to become unconscious to fall asleep, only to fall asleep within 2 hours of me having to wake up. And then I have to go take a test, and I would do horrible. And I would be in a bad mood all day, and it's just not a good combination. So if you have a kid with inattentive ADHD or ADHD that has trouble sleeping throughout the week, let them catch up on the weekend. Don't force them to go out early or to go somewhere. It's really beneficial to get sleep. So there we have it. So something else to expect when your adolescent transitions into puberty or into middle school is a big sense of apathy. Motivation drops and apathy might kick in. Grades might suffer. Classic scenario story. You have so much going on in the mind if you have inattentive ADHD. That short-term memory is going to be a little flawed. So details of assignments and whatnot and what you're taught in class, they might go out the window. Those thoughts and those things you got to memorize might not be reaching your son or your daughter. So we got to be careful because of that. So develop some sort of system for your child, your adolescent, to be able to write down their homework, and I don't know in what capacity they do it these days. I imagine it's online a lot of the time for most schools. But try to come up with a system to make sure that the homework assignment of your son or your daughter is known. Speak to the professor, the teacher if you have to, and keep that relationship, just because forgotten details in homework assignments is such a common thing. And I've worked with many individuals who have inattentive ADHD who suffer tremendously when they enter middle school. So yeah, it's because we got a lot going on in the mind, and it's a little overwhelming, and we can be very anxious too, and very irritable too if we haven't slept enough or eaten well. So understand that the grades might suffer. It's a tough transition, especially if the individual isn't getting help for their condition. So you want to make sure that you give support and love to your adolescent in this tough stage, and help them to know that you're there to help them out, because there's a lot of parents that unfortunately are very intimidating to their kids, and you need the discipline and the boundaries as a parent to the kids sometimes. But in this instance, a kid with the condition can be very afraid to come up and talk to a parent about what they're having difficulty with, because they can be ashamed, or they might feel that you might shun them or give them the talk, and so it's pretty difficult. And what helps out with the apathy and lack of motivation is getting your reward system, your neurotransmitters on check. I have a whole video on supplements you might want to check out that talks about that, because we have difficulty with multiple neurotransmitters that gives us difficulty in many different areas of focus. So for myself, I would take 20 minutes to just read one little page sometimes, because I couldn't focus long enough to remember what I was reading. I would be reading, and sometimes I would go 3 pages forward, continuously reading, and have no idea what I just read, or forget who a character or something, a plot that was brought up when I was reading that I read. I wouldn't remember what I just read, and then I would have to go back and redo it again. It's terrible. And a lot of us with ADHD have difficulty in math, because visually we have trouble seeing the figures and the numbers, and then we have trouble with short-term memory, so that makes it even harder. So math homework can take up to 3 or 4 hours sometimes. And then unfortunately we might think there's something deficiently intellectually wrong with our child, and it's not that. It's just that their condition is not being taken care of, particularly if they have ADHD in this instance. So getting supplements or getting treatment would be something that would be advised. Work with your healthcare professional in your area and talk to them about this, perhaps about getting treatment for your son or daughter, and perhaps about taking supplements as well. Because it makes school, in this instance, a lot easier. I wish I would have at least had N-acetyltyrosine to help me out with dopamine and norepinephrine, and perhaps an L-theanine supplement to help me out with serotonin, to give me the motivation, the boost, and the feel-good feeling to be able to study and focus. And for those of us who don't want to take a lot of supplements, there's a supplement called grapeseed extract. Gero Formula sells it as OPC plus 95. It is a great supplement that helps out with dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, and interestingly enough, adrenaline. Because a lot of us with inattentive ADHD, we don't do something until the last minute hits, because we need that rush and that adrenaline kick that if we don't do this right away or right now, we're screwed. We tell somebody, we're going to meet you at 2 p.m., right? And then what do? We leave the house at like 2 p.m. or like 1:59, and we break the sound barrier because of how fast we're going. So a good supplement to help you out with that, that's helped me out to just get up and go, has been grapeseed extract. It's a great supplement that helps out with multiple neurotransmitters. So it's a really good, one of those really good all-in-ones that I would recommend for someone who would perhaps like to try out supplements. So I would pair that up with another supplement called R-alpha lipoic acid, which really helps relax the mind and helps out with acetylcholine, helps with interpreting actions of others and not taking stuff so intensely and with a lot of threat, because unfortunately we got inattentive ADHD, there's going to be a lot of misinterpretation and stuff. And there's going to be some irritability or just like, I can't believe this person did that. And I know it's common during adolescence, but when you got ADHD, crank that bad boy to 11. Yeah? Because it gets a whole lot more difficult. So we got to help ourselves out. We got to help, our adolescent out in this case. So it's not that hard. And it's possible. It just takes a couple of steps, but we can definitely do it. Number 3, it might take your adolescent longer to complete their homework compared to neurotypicals and even some combined and hyperactive types. Yeah, if you have inattentive ADHD, guess what? The ADHD, according to what some people are saying, is in the mind. You know how you see the ADHD manifests itself in hyperactive type? It's more outwardly. The condition, you can see it more in the individual because they're more fidgety, they move around a lot, they might be more hyped up. And some combined types, they only get like that when certain things happen. I, for instance, growing up, I was very lethargic in certain instances. Like, it was only when I played music or did a few other things that I would just go all out and just would feel the rush of the reward system, man. Music is such a therapeutic tool for ADHD. So anyway, don't compare your son or daughter to other people in the school. If you're one of those parents that is really, really sort of like, the grades need to be good, 4.0, A+, and this and that, have my daughter, my son in honors and AP classes, let me tell you something. I didn't take a single honors or AP class. And look at me now. You know what I mean? You don't have to do that stuff. This stuff is not for everybody. You know what I mean? Got up to grad school, continuing my education, planning on opening up my own clinic. Never had an AP or honors class in my life. Why? Because you don't need that stuff. I'm not saying it's worthless, but if you got a son or daughter with a condition, that's going to make it really difficult. Granted, the personality types, the different personality types, the different cognitive functions, the nature and nurture of the individual, some people are more academically inclined. You go to cognitive functions, people of the J function who are really schedule-oriented and really like a regimen, yeah, they usually do pretty good in school. But usually when those people get to college, yeah, that's when the big fork in the road comes out, because college is a whole nother ballpark. So in middle school, expect that your adolescent's grades might not be amazing, and that's okay. As long as they're trying, the condition is being taken care of, and that they have a good sense of worth in them. You give them the love and motivation that they deserve, because it's a really isolating, lonely place when you're around so many people who don't have the condition that you do. I couldn't relate to almost anybody when I was growing up. In middle school, I felt like I related to nobody. It was a really, it was a good time, but it was also a very negative time in my life. So be encouraging. I'm not saying to have your son or daughter do horrible and disregard their grades in school, but you have to motivate them and help them out to do decent in school. And if you weren't an encouraging parent before, this might take a little more work because you're implementing a new system. So it's okay if your son or daughter is not in an AP or an honors class or doesn't have like a 5.0, and any of that stuff, just because those are just merits in school. Not everybody who succeeds and goes and gets a PhD does all those things. So the understanding that just being average in school, in the academic environment, for somebody with a condition, just getting on by, getting average grades, is an accomplishment within itself. Why? Because the school system is not made for somebody with ADHD. It's made for neurotypicals, people without the condition. So reaching that average of normalcy is an accomplishment. I know that might sound weird, but you take supplements and you get a treatment for the condition, and then perhaps after some cognitive behavioral changes and some implementations of strategies, and perhaps the AP and honors classes could come for those that can handle it. I know myself back then, I would have never been able to handle it without my treatment for my condition, because I wasn't taking anything for my condition, because nobody diagnosed me or anything. It wasn't until my mid-20s that I discovered that there was such a thing as inattentive ADHD, and I was like, I have 95% of these symptoms. This is me. I kid you not, literally, about 2 weeks later, I went and got myself diagnosed. Best decision of my life. So, it can perhaps be a good decision, or a good thing, to get started on the evaluation process for your son or daughter. It doesn't take too long. So, give them the support they need, and understand that average grades to people with a condition like ADHD are giant accomplishments and are not mere average results, but grandiose results. Number 4, inconsistent eating / hunger, lack of appetite in the morning, in the mornano, if you will. So, man, I cannot tell you how many times food was offered to me throughout the years when I was in middle school and early parts of high school, where I was just like, listen, I would get up and be groggy for hours and just not feel good because I wasn't getting a good night's sleep due to the lack of the neurochemistry we were talking about a couple of points ago, remember? So, yeah, I would feel pretty harsh. The last thing I wanted to do was eat when I got up. Unfortunately, though, that should have been the thing I should have done. So, for those of us who don't get hungry in the morning, there is a good amount of multivitamin style drinks out there that we can take. I started taking, my mom at the time, back when I was a teenager, she started buying me these multivitamin drinks called Ensures, Ensure, and not the healthiest, but yeah, it was a decent start. So later on, I switched over to taking Orgains. Now, Orgain is a really nice organic multivitamin mix that has a bunch of fruits, vegetables, and minerals and other stuff in it that's really good for you, and it really helps out. That made a gigantic difference in my life when I started taking that, because I felt like I can focus and concentrate better in school just because of that. So I started taking that all the way until my sophomore year of high school, years ago. And it made quite a difference. So for those of us who don't get hungry in the morning, yeah, perhaps you can take a multivitamin sort of drink, maybe a bar or something to help you out, because going to school on an empty stomach, it is not a good idea if you got the condition. You need to have a little something. You need to have some nutrients in you to help your neurochemistry and help your body out and help you be able to focus and achieve your goals in school. So I recommend a multivitamin drink, particularly an organic one. You got to keep in mind, folks, you don't want to put junk into the body here. This is your body, so you want to do yourself some good. So give it a go. Also, there might be an inconsistency in eating and the time of which you eat. When you have inattentive ADHD or ADHD in general, there's a big difficulty perceiving time. We just don't feel time, which is why it's recommended to have an analog clock where you can see the numbers, you can see the hands of the clock, and you can see the spatial ramifications, the spatial sort of relationship of duration of how long it's going to take, so you can start feeling time and seeing it. So, from a lot of what I've studied and multiple of the ADHD seminars I've attended, it is recommended to have a clock with numbers in the hand so you can see the spatial distribution, if you will, of the numbers. It's very helpful to manage your time and keep your goal on check, whatever you're doing. So, same thing's going to happen with eating. Because when a lot of people with inattentive ADHD, because a lot of people with inattentive ADHD just forget to eat because they might be hyper-focusing and getting into something else. So if they skip a meal, what ends up happening is your brain starts going, on the fritz, so to speak, due to lack of nutrients. So lack of eating is going to make it even harder to remember that you have to eat because you might be doing something else. That's how bad the inattentive ADHD is. We just might forget to eat for some of us. And we can feel really weak and fatigued and even irritable because of this. So help your son or daughter have a consistent eating schedule at the home, and it'll make a huge difference. So there you have it. Number 5, major mood swings, melancholy and irritation, and perhaps a frequent need to be alone. Now that sounds like a lot of adolescents in town. That sounds like a lot of teenagers, like your teenage years, like, Wilhelm, what are you talking about? That sounds like most teenagers. Yeah, but crank that dial up yet again to what, folks? To 11, okay? We gotta crank that number up. Yeah, it is common amongst teenagers, but when you got ADHD, the frequency and intensity of these things gets cranked. So, what can we do? Well, supplements is one option. And getting treatment for the condition is another option, because if you do not seek some sort of treatment to get your neurochemistry on check, it's going to be very difficult when your reward system is so low if you have inattentive ADHD that your serotonin and dopamine levels, the feel-good neurotransmitters, are low, that you're not going to feel as happy as everybody else. You might not. And that might happen a lot. I can remember being so many places with people and just feeling like I don't fit in here. I don't want to be here. And I would ask myself, why is everybody else so happy and why am I not as happy as everybody else? The suicide rate amongst people with inattentive ADHD, unfortunately, is very high. It's the highest among the 3 subtypes of ADHD. Let that sink in. That's because of the feel-good neurotransmitters, what's supposed to make us feel good in our brain. The level of those neurotransmitters is low. So we gotta try to help each other out, help our adolescent out to be able to get a more balanced reward system and a more balanced neurochemistry. So we gotta help our adolescent out to help them balance out their neurochemistry a bit more. It's just not fair to a youngster to feel so saddened and so out of place that they have to question why they're not as happy as everybody else. That's a question I asked myself on a weekly basis growing up. And I didn't know it was because of my low reward system, so an N-acetyltyrosine supplement would have really helped me out back then to help up raise my dopamine and norepinephrine, to give me motivation and concentration and focus. An L-theanine supplement to help me out with serotonin, help me feel happy, help the anxiety levels drop back then, and an an R-alpha lipoic acid supplement to help me out with acetylcholine, that would have helped me out with muscle contractions, because I always felt uncomfortable sitting in certain angles, especially in school where you're just sitting for a long time. So it would also help me interpret other people's actions and not taking stuff so intensely or being anxious, because it helps you interpret actions of others. Having ADHD is thought to be a primitive condition that is still here just because it hasn't gone away. That's not how biology works. It takes a long time. I'm talking millions, thousands, whatever amount of years for something to change mankind. So ADHD is thought to be a ramification of our primitive ancestors, rather our nomadic ancestors, because the ADHD characteristics were really needed back then. Not now though, because it's a different time, so we have to adapt. So to help out with those major mood swings, there's supplements to help out with that. Speak with your healthcare professional, or psychiatrist, pediatrician, and see what you can do. I also have a video on supplements as well you might want to check out, just because it's really tough. and give your son or daughter the space that they need. They might need some alone time. It doesn't mean that they hate you as a parent. It doesn't mean that you've done anything wrong. They just need their time alone. I spent quite a bit of time alone when I was younger because I needed that. Because after being like around people all day, my mind just going nuts, and me not feeling well, you just need to reflect and just rest sometimes when you got inattentive ADHD. Because there's an orchestra you got going on in your head. So sometimes you just need that alone time. Set boundaries. Set expectations, but be reasonable. Be loving and be supportive. And things should turn out okay. Number 6. Rejection sensitive dysphoria. If present in the adolescent, it's going to make things very dramatic and also emotional. Now, I have a whole video on rejection sensitive dysphoria and what that does to people with ADHD. It just makes rejection feel really bad. And it doesn't have to actually be rejection. It's just whatever feels like rejection. So you might do something for a friend or a favor for somebody, and then if they don't, return the favor back, or you feel like they don't appreciate it, it might be devastating. You might never want to see that person again. That's how extreme it can get. When we feel that we have disappointed someone, or we feel that we haven't fully come through for somebody, or that they don't care and love us the same way we do to them, it can be devastating. And a lot of people with ADHD have RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria. So, and I've seen so many people growing up that had the condition though to get made fun of by other people, and other people would always bag on them and be like, why can't you just take this normally? Why do you have to always, be so over dramatic? And you can't help it. We have a heightened central nervous system that can get easily startled. Yet again, I believe this is due to our nomadic ancestors that needed that heightened sense so they wouldn't get killed by another tribe over there in the bushes. You see what I mean? We needed awareness of what was going on around us. So, same thing in this scenario. Except that the needs and responsibilities are so different from our nomadic ancestors. So in this case, RSD can be pretty tough. So I have a whole video about it. I have also a whole video on different considerations and things that parents, friends, and family members can do for those of us with inattentive ADHD. Because there's so many things people don't know about inattentive ADHD. Most people don't even know inattentive ADHD even exists, to be honest. I've worked with a lot of people with ADHD, and most people are not aware of what inattentive ADHD is. I plan on changing that. So, get yourself familiar, learn how to be loving, how to be supportive, how to be understanding of somebody with inattentive ADHD. Because if you don't know the characteristics or needs of somebody with ADHD, how the hell are you going to do anything about it? So, go and check out the video, both of them. ADHD, inattentive ADHD considerations, and rejection-sensitive dysphoria. Once you realize what those things are, believe me, you will understand your son, your daughter, yourself, your husband, your weird uncle, whoever the hell has inattentive ADHD. You're going to understand them a lot more. So I highly recommend you check those out. Number 7, if the home is a tense or negative environment, that is going to negatively impact the condition. Remember what I was saying earlier about how there's a lot going on in the head upstairs, and there's a lot of anxiousness and a lot of melancholy and sometimes even a lot of irritability. So when the adolescent comes home, they want to receive love, understanding, and they want to just get some peace and tranquility from the chaos of what's going on in school. Unfortunately, sometimes, our son or daughter might come from a family where one parent might have the condition, or both parents or the whole family might have the condition. So that's pretty tough because the home environment can be pretty chaotic at that point. I cannot tell you how many times I've worked with somebody with ADHD, particularly inattentive ADHD, that they don't want to go home because they already feel bad at school. They go home and they see their parents fighting. and just being negative and intense with each other, and then forcing the son or daughter to go deliver a message back and forth between the parents, that's tough. That's really damaging to a kid. So in whatever scenario you find yourself as a parent, and whatever type of family you got, there's all sorts of different types of family these days. So whatever type of family you got, be supportive of your adolescent. Make the home not be a intense, violent, angry environment. Perhaps do your discussions and your arguments with your significant other when your son or daughter isn't there. Because when they get home, they're like finally some peace and love and tranquility away from school and the chaos of what's going on outside of life. They get home and they want to seek refuge in the family and the home, and they can't do that if there's chaos in the house. It's so sad that some kids don't even want to go home. I had some friends that would just come over to my house just because they didn't want to go home to that chaotic environment. And they had the condition too. So, be understanding of your son or daughter, and don't put them through that. As a parent, you have the authority and you have the discipline to do this, to be able to not fight in front of your kids. So, establish some sort of system, some sort of promise with your partner not to do that. Because it can be really damaging to your kids, because they want love and support and refuge and peace in the household, and might even need to ask you for help on a homework assignment or help in something. They just might need some support, and they're not going to be able to do that if you're intense and you tell them, oh, go tell your fill in the blank this, since he's not talking or she's not talking to me. It's really tough. Don't put your kids through that. Have priorities and put your priorities in order if this is a problem. This will really benefit and help your adolescent out in the end. Number 8, having an intrinsic interest is of major importance. A sense of purpose. An intrinsic interest is an interest or hobby that you do that is something that you genuinely enjoy. It's not for, oh, I'm doing this just because I need to get some cash, or I need to doing this because of this. I mean, you very well could get cash for a hobby. I'm not saying you can't these days. But intrinsic interest is a hobby or something you do that you're really passionate about, that gives you a sense of identity, a sense of fulfillment, and that takes away the monotony in life. I, for instance, get that fulfillment for doing stuff like this, making this ADHD video, from playing music. I play 15 instruments, and I've been playing music for a while. Music was my medication, my supplements growing up, because I didn't have any of that. So music has been shown to be of tremendous help for people with a condition. So my sense of purpose and my intrinsic interest was playing in bands all throughout middle school and high school. It was a different era back then. Oh, I miss those times so much. So it was fun. Granted, the different individuals, different adolescents are going to have different interests. So hobbies might include sports. Hobbies might include different clubs in school that work on a variety of different things. As long as it's something good and healthy that's going to be able to help your condition out as well, yeah, give it a go. There's so many different options than when I was young in terms of hobbies and interests these days. So what I don't recommend is just playing video games constantly or just being on the phone. You need to put a boundary on that as a parent and limit the amount of video game usage and the amount of phone or tablet usage. Because a lot of parents that have a kid with ADHD, they might have ADHD themselves, and they just give the kid the phone or the tablet and tell them to get the hell out of here. That's not helpful. That's going to make it a million times worse when they get older. Believe you me. So, set a boundary on that and help your son or daughter get a hobby that's going to help their sense of purpose so they feel like they have a sense of purpose. Because for me, I was an average student. My grades were not all that good until the end of high school because my condition, when you turn 16, 17, around that age, the ADHD starts mellowing out a little bit, because we're a little behind. Those of us with ADHD are a couple of years behind cognitively and physiologically compared to our neurotypical counterparts. So, yeah, it wasn't until around the time I was 16 that the condition started to calm down a little bit. But then once college came, yeah, I got my rear end kicked because I wasn't taking anything, because I found out I had ADHD in the middle of my undergrad. Once I got my ADHD under control, in exactly 2.5 years, I got my bachelor in psychology. Boom, done deal, just like that. A lot of you can too. You don't have to in psychology, but you can go and get your degree. Perhaps even a parent hearing this who has ADHD is like, never thought about going to school with my condition taken care of. It's a whole different ballpark, but don't get me wrong, you're still going to have to work your keister off if you end up going to school. Because college and university ain't no joke, man. It is no joke. So, same thing with your kid, too. So, something to consider. Get their intrinsic interest on check, help them get a sense of identity and something healthy and healthy for their condition, and it's going to make all the more of a difference. A positive difference, I assure you. And last point on today's video, number 9. It might be difficult making friends. Be a supportive and loving parent, but set boundaries and expectations. Realistic ones. So, why is it going to be difficult making friends? Well, if you have a condition like inattentive ADHD, yeah, your interests, desires, needs, etc., is going to be quite different from the majority of people. So, yeah. For me, unconsciously, me and the friends I had in middle school and high school, all of us had ADHD. Majority of them got diagnosed later on in life, like me, and our symptoms were all ADHD, textbook DSM ADHD symptoms. So, you never know, your adolescent might become friends with other people with ADHD. You know, it's nice to be able to have friends who have similar needs and, you know, have a similar condition to what your son or daughter has. So, but that might not always be the case. In some scenarios, it's in some schools, it's pretty hard to make friends just because some people can be really judgmental, unfortunately. And I myself was, definitely outcasted with my friends because I went to a public and a private school for middle school. And the private school experience I had was, it was not a good one. They did a good job in terms of training me. It was a college prep school, so they really worked my butt off. But yeah, over here in the U.S. in the Southwest area, the private schools I've been to 2 or 3 when I was younger, and I don't know. I don't recommend certain private schools for people with ADHD because they haven't really been accommodating from my experience. But it might be different in your area. If you're thinking of sending your adolescent to a certain school, verify with the school that they know about ADHD and that they're accommodating to ADHD, because that can make or break your son or daughter's academics and scholastic goals and abilities and whatnot. So you really want to put some emphasis on that. And understand too that it's not that there's something wrong with your son or daughter if they can't make friends. It's just that they're really different. And if they have certain quirks and certain, eccentric behaviors and whatnot, work with them. And if you need them to get, perhaps a little bit of counseling and guidance, go seek a local therapist in your area to help out with that. To get some tactics and, even some guidance counselors at some schools, they work with ADHD. They specialize in ADHD. So you can check at your local school or middle school, high school and see if that's an option as well. Just because support and definitely conditioning is going to be needed. Because a lot of us with ADHD, we don't learn the same as most people. The way we handle life and the way we handle situations is very different because our needs and our neurochemistry is so different. So this might separate us from the herd, so to speak. And that's not exactly a bad thing. But we do need friends and we do need some support. So there's different strategies there are different strategies we can utilize in order to help our son or daughter, in order to help our adolescent get some more friends and get more of a connection and a nice, jolly old time going while they're at school. Because it is possible. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope it was informative and helpful. And I hope that perhaps you can put some of these things into practice and help your adolescent out in this tough stage in their life. They need you. They need your love. They need your support. And most importantly, they need your understanding. So be the parent that they need. Be the parent. So be the parent that's going to help them out. So hopefully you enjoyed today's video, and hopefully it was of some help and some insight, and hopefully you can input some of these points we spoke about today to help your adolescent become the best them that they can be. And so you can help out your son or daughter in this very difficult time that's puberty and transition into middle school and or high school. So be a loving, supporting parent. Be understanding. Set the boundaries that you need. Set the expectations that you need. Be realistic about them with the condition. And most of all, be supportive and encouraging to your son or daughter, to your adolescent, because they really, really need it. I'm Wilhelm, your ADHD comrade. Over and out.